You're juggling it all: work, family, decisions, expectations, 6 hats, maybe more every single day. But behind the scenes, your body is running on stress, and stress left unchecked will lead to illness. I'm Dr. Shami, an integrated family doctor, and this is 6 Hats, the podcast that helps you understand what stress is doing to your body and what you can do about it now. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 6 Hats podcast. And today I'm joined by someone who truly lives at the intersection of science and lived experience. Amy Behimer has multiple sclerosis, her 4th autoimmune disease. Now, through coaching, she learned something that changed everything. While she couldn't control what was happening, she could control how she responded to it. She started focusing on what was still possible, on the habits and choices that support her body and calm her mind. She defines health not by the absence of illness, but by the presence of energy, purpose, and peace. And because she's learned firsthand, she knows truly that health is our greatest wealth. Now, Amy also has a doctorate in pharmacy, is a certified health coach and functional medicine certified health practitioner. And she also hosts the Autoimmune Health Secrets podcast. So welcome, Amy.
Oh, thank you so much. I've been looking forward to our conversation.
Amazing. So funny. I was just reading that intro going, you are a busy person, no doubt, which is awesome. I love the energy.
It is. I have a lot on my plate, and it's interesting because speaking of energy, my husband always is checking in on, are you doing too much? And we use my energy as a gauge. I say, are the things I'm doing, is it taking energy and digging a hole, or does it feel like it's taking energy like I'm climbing a mountain? And so far, this many years in, it still feels like I'm climbing a mountain. And so I think that I take that as a sign that I'm doing the work I'm meant to be doing, for sure.
Amazing, Amy. So Amy, I would love for you to start with your story. I'm really curious, what was happening in your life when you had the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis?
So we are almost at 14 years. I was 27 at the time. As you mentioned, I had a couple other diagnoses leading up to this, and I had finished pharmacy school. I was working as a pharmacist with a strong background in conventional medicine and how the conventional medicine side of things works and how it can help us. And when I got the diagnosis, I was terrified. I was truly worried. What does this mean? That my body is clearly yelling at me. It had been whispering, and now it's yelling at me that something is not right. Something is not agreeing with the way that I am living. And if you would have seen me and known me, I was a very healthy person, as you typically would think. I ate all right, and I moved my body and maintained a normal weight. But I really got concerned, like I said, when I got this diagnosis, which for me had this image of impacting my mobility and impacting my independence in the future. And so what came next was really just a deep dive into what are the things in my health and in my life that I can control in the face of a diagnosis that threatened to take a lot of that control away. And so again, through learning about, yes, functional medicine and the going to the root of what helps our bodies thrive, the biggest shift was that control of our mindset and how it creates our reality. And so that's really what led me to go back to school and get trainings and education to not be another expert on somebody's care team, but to help draw out their expertise and to really do this work with my clients of how do we still have a really good life in the face of a diagnosis that really tries to get in the way.
I love it. I think it actually applies to every condition.
Everybody.
Oh my God. So even when the patient, suffers from fatigue and it may not be a diagnosis, or is feeling a bit anxious, but it may not be generalized anxiety, our mindset is key to healing. And I totally resonate with you because that's something that we talk a lot about at Mint Clinic.
And when people, and people who find me, some don't even have a diagnosis yet. They just know that they don't want to get a diagnosis. And at my last count, I think it was about 12 to 14 different diagnoses in my group, all under the autoimmune umbrella. And like I said, some without a diagnosis. And it matters so much less even what the diagnosis is once we start doing this work, because what binds us all is this desire to what I call control the controllables. and to find a way to do it where it doesn't feel like a punishment, but instead feel like I'm going to use this diagnosis to become my healthiest instead of use it as a reason just to look for more evidence of what's going wrong.
I love that. So when someone first approaches you and there could be signs of overwhelm, confusion, because there's a lot on the internet, plus they might have seen different experts all telling different things. And to be honest with you, and I say this a lot, like in the medical model, it's scary, it's anxiety provoking, it's often depressing, because that's how they trained, to be honest, to sort of say, oh, got to be careful, this may happen again. And you're always thinking about the worst case scenario. And you don't really leave a consult motivated, excited, or in a positive frame of mind. So bearing in mind, that's the general consensus of someone in the medical model. When they come to see, what's your first step?
We said it a few times so far. It's kind of separating out for people that, yes, there is a piece of the pie that we can't control. So potentially that's a diagnosis. That could come from what our genes are doing. That could be from a symptom that is likely not to change in the near future. We look at that and we recognize that that is there. It's not this positive, or they call it toxic positivity, where, okay, but let's look over here and everything is great. We really first acknowledge that, yes, we have some realities that we're living with. And then what we do is we make room for the other side. The other ends up being 70 to 90% of the autoimmune equation is the controllables, our habits, our environment, the things that we can influence, how we feel today and our future health. And so once we just redirect our brain to this big piece of the pie that we actually can control, that's where some of those feelings of empowerment and curiosity and excitement to get started can come from. And again, it's not ignoring the things that are tough and ignoring the things that are going wrong or could go wrong, but instead it's making room for the reality that all of life, whether we have a diagnosis or not, is going to have ups and downs. It's going to have positives and negatives. And so we just want to redirect and train our brain that it's worth it to take some time and look at the positives as well, because the negativity bias is very real. And if we don't have a active way to do that, it will take us down some rabbit holes and it will keep us there because that's where it likes to be.
Awesome. Now, if someone feels like they've tried everything, what's usually missing from their approach?
I could speak to this one from experience because I am in a group of people. It's about less than 10% of people who want to make changes to their behavior, whether it be food, exercise, stress, and they say they're going to do it and they do it. That's a small group of people. And I'm fortunate that for the most part, when I wanted to make a change, I was able to do it. What was missing for me and what's missing for a lot of people is this mindset piece. I call it the inner habits that are upstream and feed the outer habits. And so I also like to say that I couldn't outnourish a crappy mindset. So no matter how quote unquote perfect my diet was, something always felt like it was missing. Like, why am I feeling like I need to wait to enjoy life? Why am I feeling like I'm waiting for another shoe to drop? And so if anybody is listening and you're like, well, I've tried this and I've checked all these labs and I've gone to this practitioner and there just still is something missing, mindset may be that piece. And that is how we learn to become aware of what are we thinking? How is it driving our experience day to day? And how is it in the long run creating our experience in the future? Because if we are walking around with a thought, whether we're aware of it or not, that we have this disease and we're always going to be a little bit worse off because of it, then we'll create more of that. And so for me, it took recognizing that I had that belief that, oh, well, now life's going to be a little bit worse. And it took finding it and saying, you know what, maybe it's possible I could become healthier because of this diagnosis, or I could have a really full life because of this diagnosis. And then over time, that curiosity and that possibility inspired me to take different actions to actually create that in my life.
Amazing. Amazing. So it's really interesting. Even the term chronic can really impact your journey, whether it's your prognosis. And I'm just reading so many books by various psychologists, even Ellen Langer from Harvard University. and a few of the psychologists that really tune into mindset. And so it's really being aware of those words, those influences that's actually created our reality. And who do we actually listen to, watch, surround ourselves? Would that be true, Amy, in your experience?
Yes, and I love all the researchers out there. It's really neat how ancient wisdom, you can go back and find these quotes from thousands of years ago that modern science is now proving true, how powerful the mindset is. And so I am a research lover. It's the PharmD in me. It's the evidence-based medicine lover in me from my background in my schooling. And so I love to go to the research in habits and in behavior change and in mindset and pull from the research the practical ways that we can take something intangible like your mindset or your thoughts. It feels kind of intangible, but I love to be able to take it, make it tangible, turn them into habits, because really that's what our mindset is. It's a collection of our thoughts, and our thoughts are kind of happening on habit, on repeat, on autopilot. And so one by one, as we become aware of the ones that take us in directions that we don't want to go, we can start to make new habitual thoughts, which over time will become the belief. And so one of the ways that I do this is it's a playbook, I call it, an ABC habit playbook of the different strategies from these amazing researchers that are out there. And there's 20 different strategies. And like I said, it's packaged in a way that we can actually put it to use in real life. And this is coming full circle to your question, but one of them is that words matter. And the words that we are using when we speak about ourselves, about our health, words that we use when we speak to ourselves, they have a weight to them. And so sometimes the difference between how we feel, or difference between our energy, between the difference between being able to make a change and not, comes down to the words that we are using, because they matter. And kind of how you said, where I had to kind of redefine what health was, if anybody uses the dictionary definition of health, it's the absence of symptoms or disease. So if we accept that definition, then none of us are healthy. And so that's my invitation to redefine some of these words, take back their power. And so if chronic is one that you find you're identifying with, or when you think about having something chronic, it feels heavy or like it's not empowering, we either ditch it or we redefine it in a way that fuels us instead of pulling us down.
It's incredible, actually. I think we're so aligned because I've just been reading all books that are so similar about beliefs, thoughts, and often we think thoughts are permanent. And I think even the first step to realize a thought is just a thought. It comes and goes. It's not the truth. It doesn't define you. And often that is even an aha moment to people to sort of say, oh, I think this way. And I go, that's not the truth. It's not permanent. You can actually rewire the way you're thinking. So how can people go on that first tiny step? Because even conversations like this will just plant the seed of a bit of an aha moment. We're going, hold on a sec. That same scenario, what happens if I just give it a different perspective, use problems and convert it to, oh, that was a challenge, and bring curiosity to it? Even that's such a small, tiny shift changes the energy around it. But if someone is trapped in the way of thinking for years and years and years, what's that first tiny step they can take to even understand that they can start rewiring?
I think the first step may be to ask yourself, and of course to answer, like, what do I want? What's something that I want to change? And whatever comes up first is likely going to be either a thought that you have, a feeling that you have, or a habit that you have, like an action that you're doing or not doing. And so the cool thing about mindset is that it's at play in everything that we're doing. So a lot of people, they want to feel better, and they just want to exercise more consistently, or they want to eat better, or they want to eat less sugar, or they want to de-stress. So ask yourself, what is it that I want? And then we can look at, well, how am I thinking about this thing? And that could be the entry point into seeing what your mindset around that change really is. So if you're thinking that, I wish I could eat better, or in a way that gives me more energy, or I wish I could stop this sugar that everyone keeps telling me is so bad for me. And then I ask, well, what are you thinking about that? What's your mindset? Likely, and I don't want to put thoughts into people's brains, but a lot of people will say, well, it's just going to be so hard to change, or I don't want to feel deprived, or it's going to be, kind of miserable. That might be the first entry point into this mindset work to really question, okay, does it have to be that way? Is that true? What if there is a way that I could eat well and it doesn't have to feel terrible, and I can find a way to actually enjoy it? And then you start to play around with, how am I thinking about this thing I want to change? And what are the ways that I can wiggle loose from what feels so true, but likely is not? Because look around you, there are humans everywhere likely doing and thinking and feeling the way that you want to feel. And I promise you, it's not because they are different than you. It's just because they're thinking different things, which has them feeling different things, which has them doing different things. And it may come natural to them, or most likely, maybe there's someone who has decided, you know what, I want to learn more about this. I want to learn about this skill of looking at how my thinking is affecting my life and my health. And, the amount of people that have gotten support from coaches is so small when you look at the whole world. And I like to think of one day, when people put aside any stigma, or they don't make it mean that they've failed if they get support from a coach. I love to think of that day, because again, it was a coach that first showed me my mind that said, there's a different way to think about this. And I was like, what? Teach me your ways. So, even with all my education and background, really was that piece that changed everything for me.
I'm going to go back to mindset, because what you've mentioned are those key lifestyle changes. I love that: movement,
Yep.
sugar, just eating nutritious food. And we're going to go back to what shifts of mindset we can do on that. And you mentioned something really important as well: stress. What key strategies helped you on your journey to manage multiple sclerosis?
So in terms of mindset, or all the lifestyle pieces?
Lifestyle. I'm quite curious.
Lifestyle. Yes. So I ended up, out of necessity, developing a framework. And again, tapping into the science. Frameworks matter because they help us stop the overwhelm, right? When we can find a framework that is holistic, it makes sense to us, it's science-backed. I built my framework to be balanced, and again, to calm the overwhelm in a world where there is way too much information. It's actually called infobesity, and ChatGPT is
I love that. I didn't even know.
I mean, yes, infobesity, and it literally is defined as information overload that actually impairs you from doing anything. It paralyzes your action because you're worried that you're doing it wrong, or this information conflicts. And so with the rise of AI, it's making the information overload even worse. And so it's more important than ever to find a framework to ground yourself and to kind of filter in, what do I need to know? And I bring up this framework because it includes the 6 key areas of our lifestyle that I call controlling the controllables. And these 6 areas are the controllables. And the good news is, I'm going to go through the 6 areas, but none of them are things that you haven't heard before. So you don't need to learn different things. It's really the basics. And when you have this framework, when you see a new book, or you listen to a new podcast, or you see something on social media, you can file it away into one of these 6 key areas and trust that, okay, I'll get to that with time. That's something I can work on. I don't need to do it all at once. And so the 6 key areas, the first is mindset, and that is pervasive throughout all the others, but it deserves its own spoke of the habit hub. The framework is called the habit hub for autoimmune health, and mindset deserves its own spoke because it is the inner habits that we can build and optimize. Number 2 is food. So I really looked at not eating a perfect diet, not finding what someone else said I should do, but how can I use food in a way that feels good? And of course, taking into account what the science says, but always checking in with ourselves. What is our body telling us? The third spoke or area is movement. So all types of movement. We know these bodies were made to move. And so no matter what potential disability or limitation, movement is never something that we don't have within our reach. It just maybe needs to be modified or adjusted. Fourth one is rest and relaxation. So that's where combating stress comes in, getting good sleep, really finding those things that signal to your body that you are rested. The fifth one is my favorite. I know you're not supposed to have favorite children, but My favorite spoke is connection. So that is relationships. That's how we relate to others in our life, how we relate to ourselves. For me, it's how I relate to my spirituality. That is an area, that is a lever that we can pull to feel and function better. And then the sixth one is called the good stresses. And I have quotes around good because it's the way that we stress our brain and body in a way that is a challenge. Again, back to how words matter, but we do it knowing that we're going to come out stronger on the other side. We do it knowing that this is going to be a little bit tough, but I'm up for the challenge because of the benefits I can get from it. So really those 6 areas, since I started living them, tweaking them, and then creating the framework almost 10 years ago, it's still the framework I use. I coach with my clients. We revisit each spoke twice a year. We give the focus for the month to a different spoke. And so it ends up just being this really smooth ride because every so often we know we're going to get back to that area and give it a tune up. Take a look. What do I want to keep? What do I want to change? What could I optimize? And if we're thinking of those 6 key areas, we are in a pretty good place to ensure that we are, listening to our body and giving our body the energy and the good fuel that it needs.
I loved how it was so achievable when you said that. So achievable. And what was so key to all of those areas, and we're going to almost like do a quick fire response about each area, because but the key things what I normally hear, and we challenge that is, oh, for sugar, but I need a treat. I'm missing out. So that's number one. Number 2 is, oh, it's going to be hard to exercise. I don't have the time. And number 3 is the stress of, well, isn't what everyone's stressed? Isn't that just the way life is? So, Amy, let's find ways to rewire those 3 big factors. What would you say about sugar?
Oh, sugar. I think that sugar we know it doesn't do any good things on our cells and our bodies, especially in excess, and especially when it's packaged up in ultra processed foods. So I walk my clients through creating what's called their feel-good food protocol. And it is not just what they want to eat and not eat, but it's also the who, what, when, where, why, and how of food. It's all of it. And on their feel-good food protocol, you decide, what do I want when it comes to sugar? Some people really love the idea of being able to enjoy celebratory desserts with their family and friends. Some people really love to have a piece of dark chocolate at the end of the night. You get to decide from a loving place, if I were eating in a way that feels really good to me, where would sugar live on this plan? And so I think that most of us can agree the part about sugar that we don't like is the part that when we're eating it, it feels like we don't have control to stop, right? It feels like it's done outside of our control. And so I teach people how to dial down the desire for sugar. So it's not about, oh, the goal is not to eat the cupcake. I teach people how to not to want to eat the cupcake. And that's a brain-based approach that works with dopamine. We dial down that desire. And then I say, decide with love, where does it fit in on your feel-good plan? If it's every once in a while, is it a little bit each day? Is it none? For me, for the most part, I don't do great with sugar. And so I feel really good when I have very minimal sugar, but really choosing with intention for you so you don't feel like someone's coming in and telling you, you can't have this. You get to decide. And when you have really good information and when you have new skills to maybe control it in a way that you never had before, I find that people make really good decisions for themselves.
That's such an awesome perspective, actually. Oh my God, so many people need to hear that. Going on to exercise. Oh, it's just so hard. Don't know where to fit this in.
Oh, well, define exercise, right? So right there, words matter. Is it movement we're craving? Is it stretching? Is it strength? Is it endurance? There's all these different ways to define exercise. And so if we all agree that moving our body is important for mental, physical, emotional health, then we have the goal, okay, how are we going to move our body more? And with movement, consistency is key. And so many people think, oh, I'm just not consistent. No, you just haven't learned the skill yet. So to start, we use another strategy from the playbook called Trust in the Tiny. And Trust in the Tiny is not just tiny habit, because it's trust in the tiny, which means back to the mindset, we build the belief that a tiny bit matters. And so with that, if you feel like your brain is telling you, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy, well, then can you get your brain on board for 2 or 3 minutes of light movement that actually increases your energy? And if somebody really says, I don't have 3 minutes, then, lovingly, I would call them on that and say, your brain is offering you this lie. Back to, we can't believe every thought that we have. And so really starting with the habit of showing up. Don't worry about what the exercise is at first. Just start with building the habit of showing up to move your body. Sometimes that can even start with moving your breath. That counts. That strengthens your core muscles. That increases oxygenation, that does all these good things. So I say the best strategy would be to start with, if we only had to have one, I have many that I would, throw at this, but the first one would be trust in the tiny, and trust that starting small, exactly where your time is, exactly where your energy is the first step that's going to unlock future steps so that you'll be moving more in no time.
It's so true, because every time I have this conversation about exercise, I'm literally picturing someone going, wow, I can't lift that 20 kilos in the gym. I can't look like that person in the gym. And you're right. We've got to really pull it right back down, start wherever you are, even just going for a walk, even just walking slightly further away, park the car further away and just walk a bit more.
Well, and here's the coolest thing about exercise is that your body only knows the challenge it's being given. So for one person, that may be a push-up on the floor. But for you, it may be a push-up against a counter or a wall. We don't need to compare, because your body doesn't know that you are on a wall or on a counter. I say my mitochondria, the little organelles that create energy, my mitochondria don't know whether I'm lifting 20 pounds or 30 pounds. All it knows is the resistance that it's getting. So if it feels hard for you, trust that your body is exactly where it should be.
Excellent. And lastly, all about stress, which is my first love. When I do more and more research into stress, it's just phenomenal how this dysregulated nervous system contributes to everything. So not only energy levels, pain perception, yes, to mental health, but we know, and many of my listeners know by now, how it affects not only weight, but thyroid, perimenopause, literally every part of the body. And yes, gut, can't forget the gut. So when it comes to stress and management, it's such interesting conversations I have, because people have just accepted that life is crazy and busy, and especially moms with so many different hats on. I have so many conversations. Well, I have to take my child to, all these different activities. We can't eat all together. I have to start early. I'm doing 101 things at the same time. I've got a friend who goes, she's getting married in a couple of weeks, but has also decided to buy a house and is also starting to renovate, and is also working full time, and has got 2 young kids. And I just want everyone to pause and just take a step back and go, how much of that is a choice? And do we need to do all of that at the same time?
Yeah.
What would you say to that, Amy?
Well, because like you said, this is your love, and you drop so much wisdom about stress. So hopefully I'll provide a different perspective. And similar, this is going to sound familiar with the mindset, where we aren't trying to rid ourselves of the negative side. We're just trying to make room for the positive, to balance it out. And so the first thing with stress that we do, especially because we love habits, it's really hard to have a habit of less stress. So we take the flip side. We say, what is something that truly helps you feel rested? So instead of stressing less, how do we add in more rest and crowd out some of those stressful moments? And I could have 20 different people that I'm talking to with 20 different answers on what really helps them feel rested, not what their Instagram feed is telling them helps them rest, but when is the last time they really felt like they took a deep breath and they sighed, and let's grab that thing and let's plan for it. Let's make that a habit that is built into your days, into your weeks, into your months. And I say like magic, but it's not really like magic. It's like science, that when we add in more things that help us rest, we actually will see the stress go down. And warning, your brain again is going to offer you a lie of a thought that I do not have time. We don't need much. We do not need much. We just need what starts as moments. And you will start to fall in love with it and find ways to stretch it. I'm speaking from experience because rest is often my most neglected spoke of the Habit Hub. As you can imagine, we opened saying how many things I'm doing, but I have been building in these habitual rest practices. And it's wild how much my body is saying, thank you so much. I love you.
I love that, the twist to rest. And I resonate with you as well, Amy. And I think my listeners know, wow, for years I've been practicing on how to rest. And
Yes.
I think I don't know, it was influences growing up or just that narrative. You're sitting doing nothing. You're wasting time. What are you doing? As though like there's this sense of urgency around life. And I had to really, I'm talking years of rewiring of actually, it's okay to do nothing. It's okay to sit in stillness.
Yeah. And that's why the Habit Hub approach that I mentioned works so well, because each 6 months, when it's time for us to relook at rest, we get a chance to say, did I slip into some old patterns? Do I want to bring this back? Or what is restful for me now? I mean, we are changing bodies. And so if we don't fall in love with a system to make these habits and to look at these lifestyle areas, then habits that we made, they may be outdated because like we're different people today than I will be at 45, than I will be at 65. And so again, it's about learning the process and the skill of making these habits in a way that meets us exactly where we're at with ever-changing bodies.
Absolutely. Oh, Amy, I've absolutely loved this conversation. Before we let you go, what are your final words for our listeners?
I want people to know that they are not broken. If changing something feels tough, or if they feel like they've let themselves down in some way because they want to make a new habit or break a habit, it is not your fault. You are human. We are wired to seek pleasure, avoid discomfort and save energy. And so really give yourself grace and just say, oh, I just haven't learned the skill yet, but it's learnable. And it all starts with just one thing, just one goal. We aren't going to boil the ocean, but we just start somewhere, and getting clear on that one thing, then, we'll get to the next step and things will evolve. But yeah, I would say you're not broken and just start somewhere.
Wise words. And Amy, where can people find you?
As you mentioned, you're here listening to a podcast, so you probably love podcasts. Autoimmune Health Secrets is my podcast, and it's really about living this Habit Hub approach. And so we talk about all things mindset and strategy and all the different spokes that I mentioned we dig into. So I would love to hang out with you there. I also have a free quiz, 7 questions, 3 minutes, and kind of where we mentioned about if we're going to start in one place, where should we start? It helps land you with your result in one of these 6 key areas of the Habit Hub to tell you, if I want to get started, where can I get my biggest energy bang for my buck? And trust whatever result you get, start there and start working on that habit of how to actually make a small change and build up your confidence that you can do this.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Amy.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to 6 Hats, where it's all about progress, not perfection. If this episode spoke to you, don't wait, hit follow now, leave a quick review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Want to take your next step today? Download my ebook. The link is waiting in the show notes. And remember, this is general advice only. Always speak to your practitioner for anything medical. See you next time.